Hey everyone, welcome to Agile World in Tea. Hey Jayashree.
Hi, Sonora. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
Jayashree.
Hi,
Hi, Sinora.
Jayashree.
Hey.
Great. Namaskara. ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ.
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 ನೀವ್ ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ನೀವ್ ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ನೀವ್
Wow.
ಹೇಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ?
ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
Hello
ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ.
everyone. Namaste. Can I know what all we just
Namaste.
spoke?
ನಮಸ್ತೆ.
Namaste. Yeah. So this
Yeah.
is Kannada, and we have our three wonderful guests from Namma Bengaluru. So I think it's worth having the introduction in the language. So welcome again. We have with us Vivek Ganesan, who is an agile practitioner, author, public speaker. We have Guru Thimmapuram, who is also an agile coach, speaker, and also an author. We also have Kiran Kashyap, who is an enthusiast in DevOps and teaching, and he's definitely a change agent in agile. I think I'll hand it over to you, the three guests, to introduce yourself. Maybe we can start from Vivek. Please introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jayashree and Sinora. So my name is Vivek, and I am originally from Tamil Nadu. I have been in Hyderabad for 8 to 9 years, and then I moved to Bangalore. And right now, I am working as a consultant in the technical agility space, where you help organizations and teams to get better in the technical aspect of their agile transformations. I do some process aspects also, but technical is sort of my expertise, I would say. And apart from that, along with Guru and Kiran here, we have written one book also around metrics for agile product teams. So on right now, I am also working on my own startup called Ampere, and we are trying to build a SaaS product, which is still getting off the market. We haven't made money yet, but yeah, we have done an MVP and we are getting signups. That's how it's going for me right now.
Great, great to have you here, Vivek. Thank you. Guru, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you, Sinora. First of all, I'm glad to be part of this, Agile Indie web podcast. I am Srihari Guru Prasad Thimmapuram. I know it's a very long name to go by. That's the side effect of being born in Andhra Pradesh. You will get long names, right? I go by Guru in short, Guru Thimmapuram. I'm an agile coach with a financial services company, reputed financial services company in Europe. I'm also an author, as Vivek also said. We three of us wrote a book called Metrics for Agile Product Teams, which has been, we wanted to share our experiences being in this agile industry for quite some time. And I'm also a technical enthusiast. I typically contribute to agile and technical communities as much as I can. And as Enterprise Agile Coach, I help organizations and teams and individuals to become better and happier in the way they are working together. So that's pretty much about me in a brief.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Guru. Vivek.
Kiran.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's
Kiran.
yeah, no worries. So yeah, myself, Kiran, and I'm currently serving as a Scrum Master for Lowe, and I'm in this agile world for the past 5 years. And and I've co-authored a book along with Vivek and Guru, and I've also spoken at international conferences like XP and Agile India and Regional Scrum Gathering and World DevOps Summit. And I've also like to write, so I've written few blogs. And apart from this, I love to play badminton, so you can see me carrying my kit back around Bangalore in the weekends. So that's all about me. Another interesting fact about Vivek is he missed to mention, so he learned Kannada in just I think 3 to 5 months. He learned Kannada both reading and writing. So
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
That's like the IQ's just got shoot up
Yeah,
on
it's
your graph like that.
Yeah, all of a sudden one
So-
day he started speaking to me in Kannada, so I was like shocked. Very deep.
Okay.
So what
Great.
motivated you to do that?
No, Kiran taught a lot of Kannada that I speak today. And
Okay.
also, it's also about going to a new place. And if we have to, get new friends,
Yeah.
it helps when you speak the local language. That's always there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
We cannot
yeah,
agree anymore.
and also adding to this, I think Vivek and Guru has been my mentors. So initially it was Vivek who was mentoring me since I entered the world of Agile, and Guru too has been helping me grow. So yeah, that's all about now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So how
Thank
come
you,
how come
Kiran.
you guys came together? Like, I'm intrigued to know, like all three of you, how did you come together and decided to write a book like that?
Yeah, it's a long story. I can start if that's okay, right? So it all started when I was working with Accenture, as an enterprise agile coach. Accenture has acquired the Solution IQ at that time, and Vivek was part of that acquisition, and that's when we met together. And we were launching in Accenture. We were launching like the innovation hub during that time, and we wanted to build those agile parts as a new thing to showcase to our customer base and see how agility brings value to the business, right? That's when we met, and during that connect itself we connected pretty well together, and then we got an opportunity to work together in Societe Generale, which is again currently where we are working. And that's how our friendship blossomed, and I got introduced to Kiran through Vivek, and he has been very wonderful friend of mine now, and we three share a very good common there, and
The three
it all started that
amigos.
way. Yeah,
Three
absolutely.
amigos.
Great. I think let's talk about this book. I think it's very interesting that how you three thought about this concept called metrics. I think we all talk about agile and how it should be done, the principles, so on and so forth. But I think it's very rarely spoken about, which is the topic metrics for the product teams. So, what is the inspiration, or what drove the three of you to kind of come up with this book? I think we would love to know about it.
Um, I think the most honest answer was we wanted to do something since we all had since this COVID thing came. We had some time with us, especially if you're in Bangalore, right? Every day you can save at least 2 to 3 hours if you're not traveling to office.
Not traffic. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so because of this, we all had some time with us. We thought, why not make use of this? And we started listing down what things we could do, whether we could do some blog or. So we finally decided, let's write a book. And then what about this book? We just kept on thinking what we'll write. We came up with a lot of topics, and then we sort of thought, okay, this metrics, this is the most probably politically also it touches a lot of areas. So we thought, let us take this topic, and that's how we started writing.
So I still remember that day when we started talking about the topics, and we started talking about, okay, what are our frustrations, right? When we go to our client place and when we are going to work, for example, in our own workplaces, what are our frustrations about? And somehow we found that metrics is one of the areas where it has the potential to make people feel like they're in some pressure cooker while actually getting nothing done. Right.
Yeah.
And we wanted to change that, and we had we fortunately had exposure to some ideas because of we learning from other conferences and books and some other experiments of our own take on how you can basically handle metrics for if you are running a product team. And we wanted to put that thought process into something that other people can use, right? And that's how it started. Guru, do you have anything to add?
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I still remember when it started, right? I mean, it was on the 31st night of 2020 where we gathered together to have the party.
Yes,
Right?
like the manifesto was written.
Exactly. So that's where we started, like, what should we do differently for the next year, right? So that's where this thought triggered, like, why don't we write a book? right? And what it could be like, what is the topic for writing our book. That's when we thought, like, based on our experiences, we figured out, like, there are a lot of confusions around what are the right metrics for the agile product teams that could help them to actually bring out their best. So that's where we thought, like, and as the saying goes, right, what you measure is what you get, right? So typically that's how it is. So it's important for individuals and teams and organizations to measure right things to get right results. So I thought, like, it will be interesting for everybody in the agile industry, which can actually help both as individuals and organizations as well, and teams as well. So that's how we started that thought, and that triggered our
And
writing of the
yeah,
book.
I like
and it
how
was great.
Sinora compared this with that manifesto writing, right? Very similarly, Agile manifesto was written when some frustrated
Exactly.
engineers
Frustrations were,
gathered together,
Yes.
right? Similarly, we
Yes.
are frustrated Agile practitioners. We gathered together
And
on
then COVID.
New Year's Eve, and we
exactly.
thought, okay, let's do this.
No, definitely. And I think this is a
yeah.
very integral topic to all of us, like all agile practitioner out there, that we are all like, we are doing work day by day, but if you don't see any pattern or any trend line or anything that's progressing us towards somewhere, a good or bad matrix, but somewhere where everyone can see where they're heading to, it's of no use for us to bring that right conversation on the table. In fact, I was just going over your book, and I saw you started with difference between data and matrix. Like, data is different, and then matrix is what you derive out of data. We have all the data in the world, but are we getting the right matrix? And I was so intrigued by that, like that thing that was written. It's like, wow, that's amazing. That's like bang on for me, because we are all struggling with data to find that right matrix. So yeah.
And we also learned a lot while we wrote this book. So we also started understanding there are so many things even we don't know. So then we had to do a lot of homework, and then we had to rewrite, and
Yeah.
it was a very good experience for us,
in fact,
writing a book.
in fact, I still remember the conversations that we had in Chayos, which is chai shop, where we used to write. You typically heard of pair programming and mob programming, right? We kind of wrote the book through mob writing. So we gathered together, and it was like heated conversations. We used to take a sip of tea and start talking about what should go in, what should not go in, right? And that's how it all started. And then I still remember, like, we forget to drink tea during those heated conversations. So tea would become cold, but still we never felt that it was cold because the conversations were so hot.
and
We are all
it was
always hot,
mostly
so that's also good.
It looks like a
and
party to me already.
yeah, and it was mostly frustration from Vivek. So me and Guru used to write lengthy sentences. Vivek used to come and shout, "Guys, I want this 10 lines. Make it 1 line. I don't know what you do. I want this in 1 line." People will not have patience to read 10 lines. So this was his always, So we all
That's
those things,
amazing.
the way we word things, like a lot of things we
You
learned.
were all pushing each other and
Yeah.
finding that right balance.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And I think there was something mentioned in the book which talks about, right metrics and wrong metrics. So I think right metrics is something probably which a lot of us know about and is talked about. But it was very interesting to see that you're also mentioning about the wrong metrics, right? So especially for the product teams. So without giving away too much, I know there's a lot of information out there which you would want people to go through and read, but without giving away too much, if you can give us some examples of a wrong metrics.
Sure. Actually, most of the times, at least when I'm doing an agile transformation, right, and Guru and Kiran can also speak to that. Most of the times when we start with metrics, most of them are wrong metrics. For example, anytime you enter into an agile transformation or a team that claims to, practice agility, they start with a metric called velocity as a measure of effectiveness of the team. And there are a lot of blogs out in the universe, right, about why velocity is a bad metric, blah blah blah. But how, despite the number of blogs and despite the number of what do you say gnan that goes on LinkedIn about this topic, we still see on the ground that people are still sticking to velocity. And there is another metric which we spoke about. They call it the say-do ratio, commitment versus completion ratio. So these two seem to be a little weird for us. What we wanted to do was we basically categorized metrics on different topics. For example, forecasting. What are the things that what are the metrics that you could measure in forecasting and what you should not measure? So in that forecasting, we basically don't use velocity as a don't use velocity as a effectiveness metric, but use it as a forecasting tool, not as a effectiveness metric. That is one of the wrong explanations, wrong examples that we did. And also another thing which was also a part of the earlier book which I wrote, it's called Blameless Continuous Integration, is some teams used to measure how many times a build failed, right? And they used to penalize developers for failing builds and all these things. So we wanted to take a different stance, which is basically a psychological safety stance, and say, okay, instead of doing that, why don't you basically try to find out, the downtime and reduce the downtime for the build, instead of trying to find out who broke the build and trying to blame that person, right? These are two examples that directly comes to my mind. Do you have anything, Kiran or Guru? Good versus
I think
bad.
another thing we thought was measuring developers, right? So this is always a complex topic. Nobody has found out a right way how to measure a developer. So, but we still understood there are some wrong ways which can lead to bad things. Like, for example, number of story points each developer completed. So in teams, what happens if we are measuring a team based on each developer? So we observed there is some resistance from developers helping each other, because if I help you today, tomorrow, I don't know whether I'll be rewarded for that. And especially things like pair programming, where two developers have to sit together, or it's a developer and a tester must sit together and accomplish a common goal. So these are the things which can go against the agile one team culture, the why this agile movement even started. So these things, this is another example we can think of. And and of course velocity and anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think overall philosophy of this book is to let people know that there are popular metrics that are being used in the industry now, and how they could, even though they are popular, how they could impact the teams adversely, and undesired effects can be seen there. Instead of those popular metrics which could create undesired effects, what they could use instead of that metric, what they could use, so that you can build the agile culture in the team and also get good results and make people also happy while you measure their output or outcomes.
Okay, great. I think, I think somewhere it also emerges about people versus processes, where you're kind of emphasizing on, don't penalize someone, or emphasize on the people rather than the process. I think that comes out very, very vividly. What else? What are some of the sneak peek that you can give about the book that you think would help the product teams or agile coaches? What are some of those things?
Actually, we have not written anything significantly new when compared to what is already available out in the internet, right? Most of the times, even when we wrote our book, the text of our book, right, we referred a lot of other blogs, books, and other things on the internet. So we have not created anything new of any sort, by the way, right? So one thing that you may find in a metrics book, which you may not find in other places, is this topic of code coverage being a bad thing. Right? Generally, when you talk about quality, people say, okay, hey, you know what? We will try to measure code coverage, and that will be our quality indicator. But we have a very extensive discussion, in-depth discussion on why measuring code coverage is a very bad thing to do. And instead of code coverage, you could measure something called mutation testing, mutation coverage. Right? That is one topic which I personally have not found anywhere else. And we also had that thought process. All three of us unanimously agreed that no, this is how it has to go into our book. Right, and that's something that we could say as something new. I'm not sure.
And another thing is even in metrics, we try to categorize into different stages. So there are some metrics which you should use while you're planning in your planning stage, and there are some metrics which you need to use in your execution, and there are some metrics you need to use along with other metric. For example, you can use your velocity only as forecasting. No, for example, code coverage. You use code coverage. There are some disadvantages, no problem. But if you use it along with mutation testing, you can get more benefit.
More
So we
benefits.
have also told, if you are using this, use this one as well, because there are some things, and also they use only number of features you develop, but only number of features you develop may not give the whole picture. You should also tell how many bugs you reported. So like that, we have tried to bring in some metrics which complement each other, and that's another thing. Couple of things which you can specifically find in the book. We just organized it well and made sure we removed all the other unnecessary metrics, and then we made it as light as possible. So yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
now you can read it in few hours if
Yeah.
you're
And you can start from anywhere. You don't have to start
Anywhere.
from the first also.
Okay.
That is
That's
amazing,
interesting.
because I think a book is really easy, like for us as coaches to get into a book reading from start to end. It gets really cumbersome at time, and then you kind of lose it in the mid. But if there's a book that you can pick it up from anywhere, you just go in, you know what the topic you want to study about, or just scroll around and just go into it and just study about it. So which is a great thing about your book. I mean, I totally loved it. I was just scrolling through. I was actually doing that. I was scrolling through the topics based on what was I intrigued about. So yeah, that's amazing thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, while I was reading about it, I was also thinking that why do you think organizations actually, although they know that there are certain matrices which are not really effective, why do they really easily get into the trap of following the same thing? Why do you think that happens?
One of the thing that we see that is most of the times when the SMEs, agile coaches, when they go to agile transformations, they talk about what is not good for the teams, but they won't propose what is the alternative for that, right? Sometimes if you don't propose an alternative of how do you measure things, people will it was working for me, even though it was not working, they feel that it was working for them quite some time and they don't want to change it. So unless you propose what is alternative that could work well instead of this metric that you are measuring, that way they would start experimenting with those metrics, right? This book is wholly targeted about that kind of a message, where we wanted to not just tell this is a bad metric, but instead of that what you could use, right? We suggest something instead of the popular metric that you are using. If you can use this particular metric, you could get benefits more. So that's how that's the one differential factor that you can see in this book. And we have something called fact cards, right? We have listed down something called fact cards in each and every chapter, metric chapter, right, where you can see what is that metric, what it should be used for, and what it should not be used for, right? And instead of that metric, what else could be used. So you can just get a glance of why you should use that particular metric and why you should not use that particular metric. Instead of that, what kind of other metric that you can use.
Interesting.
I have a point offer here, right? Regarding the question of why organizations get into that mindset, right? One reason that I see when I go and look at the teams that I transform is that the transformation is not in all the places. It is in pockets. For example, it might be at a team level, or maybe they will join some 5-10 teams and they say, okay, we'll create a tribe or a release train and we'll do transformation at that level, or maybe just one department, right? Now, what happens is that when transformation or there is the leadership news about the transformation, if it is not reaching other aspects of the organization, particularly HR, right? What happens is that HR will come and ask, okay, tomorrow you have to measure one developer against each other. What are you going to do about it? That question has to be still answered by the managers, even though we can go ahead and say, okay, in Agile, management has to be self-management, team management, self-organizing teams. Still, that question is going to come. right? And it is not a very easy topic, and it is a topic that our community also sort of does not give a specific response on. That is one answer, where people are still, even after this book, this problem is still going to be there, right? It's because it's not an easy problem to solve. One aspect is that the agile transformation is not happening in all places in the organization, and it is very difficult to bring everything together. There have been organizations, particularly startups that I've been a part of, where this comes from the leadership. For example, it comes from the C-suite saying, okay, we are going to do this particular thing. Then the way people measure things are also going to change based on that. That is one thing. Another reason that I have seen is that the transformations are managed as projects. Though we say agile transformation, we want to move teams to agile. Still, these agile transformations in itself, they are managed as projects. So there will be a project manager for an agile transformation, and that project manager will need a start date and end date for the transformation of a program or a tribe, and that needs milestones, and it also runs as a project. It's a irony, right? Now, because of this, what happens? People are forced to give an end date for a transformation and outcomes for a transformation before you even start, and that is a big thing, right? Then what happens? You get into checkbox transformations just because of that. People do the just right minimum things where you check the boxes. Okay, are they doing stand-ups? Check. Are they doing retrospectives? Check. Do they have a person called a Scrum Master? Check. Okay, yes, this team is agile now, and then we can go on. Instead of going deeper into the problems that they see and say, okay, fine, some of the aspects that we're talking about, right? Code coverage versus mutation coverage. This problem comes only when you go deeper and touch the developer who is actually doing the projects. Most of our agile transformations do not touch the developer at all. It touches the developer in a very negative way, where you put more pressure on him by doing daily stand-ups rather than actually making his job a little easier by adding focus and the technical disciplines that come. That does not happen. These are the two reasons why still people, partly because of ignorance and partly because of peer pressure, sometimes partly because of politics, people still sometimes stick to the old. And it does not just need convincing the leaders, it needs some action from experimentation from the ground up in order to change. That's my personal opinion, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic that you touched, Vivek, and I think it's the low-hanging fruits that get the most agile transformation push as say that they're asked to do versus the C-suite in the bigger organization where they're sitting and they're still looking for those digits, the numbers, the matrix that can help. Like it's good to have matrix to help them make decision, but that transparency of internal team matrix, do we need to really show it to them? I don't think so. Like the psychological safety towards all these matrix, like when the team comes in and if there's something that's not going by the expected trend line, the team starts to panic, like, okay, this can impact my promotion maybe, or my next steps in my career or something of that sort. So to bring that psychological safety is also very important, and that's why these metrics have to be specific, I think, to those particular levels, like to the stakeholder only these metrics should be going and not the internal team metrics, or to the external teams as well, like what is the kind of exposure we want to give to other teams. So yeah, it's great topic that you touched.
Yeah,
So
since you
like you
mentioned
said,
about
right, by you just using the word transparency, people are forced to give their metrics to everybody else, and that creates a very negative dynamic among people, as you rightly said. Yes, Kiran, sorry, I cut you off.
And she was also mentioning about the metrics which leaders get, right? Leaders, product owners. We have also tried to mention that there are some metrics which leaders can share back to the developers. Like the impact they did, they can show the numbers. See, this is what you made us, guys. This is the money you are, and this is the impact you are helping people. So there are some features which developers do, and especially if you are in a bank, you can make your bankers go home early, an hour early, because your app did it. If we can show these kind of metrics, some human aspects, because of this he went to he was able to spend more time with his kids, or if these kind of metrics, if leadership can show to the developers, or even show it in a big TV every week, this is what you did, and that will also bring back. That is also another metric we have discussed about.
Yeah, that would be so uplifting and so empowering to the teams to look at, like they are really making some difference out there in the work that they do, because they don't get that kind of transparency. They're just asked to build, do those coding, do those checking, and they're like lost out there. Yeah, it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah, I also wanted to add there. I think Vivek was mentioning about how the HR expects certain things, and I think that's why it's even more important to have the agile transformation not just in projects or teams. It should also happen across all functions. Even HR should know what agile teams are, how do they function. So keeping the KPIs in line with the agile principles. I think that's very important, and I think that will kind of give a holistic view of what the metrics should be across organization and how it should be measured. I think great insights into metrics, not just for the product teams, but also how we can scale it to the rest of the organizations. Great. I think apart from the metrics for the product teams, what do you think could be the challenge if we continue if we continue following what we are doing and do not change? What do you see the potential challenges could be in the next 5 or 6 years?
Very hypothetical
Market,
question.
yeah,
Good question.
market
Yeah.
can go anywhere. So
I
You
think
Because
say
see,
something, Kiran.
I think why I thought that question is like it's been almost 2 decades that we are having agile here, right? And a lot of things have changed the way we work, but a lot of things hasn't. But we're still continuing. We're still moving forward. Do you think metrics is a pivot in itself where it can change the way agile transformations are for organizations, or do you think that it's okay, it can move ahead the way it is?
Maybe I can start with some of my thoughts, right? Measures and metrics typically has impact on people behavior, right? So if you are agile is all about cultural shift and mind shift. If you don't change how you measure and what you measure, and still you expect people to change in a different way of working, it doesn't happen that way, right? So until unless what you measure also has to change, if you want to bring about a cultural change, what you are measuring is also has to change. That's how you can actually impact the behavior of the people, and behavior automatically build those habits, and then that will become eventually a culture in the organization. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I think that's great thing to say, Guru, because normally organization says let's go agile from tomorrow. Like they got a funding of agile projects and they just go agile. The contracts that we do with agile are not really agile contracts, right? They're waterfall, probably with the waterfall SOWs, waterfall contracts, and then the teams are asked to do agile. And that's why, like Vivek earlier mentioned, there are milestones, there are,
Yeah.
start and end dates in the transformation. And that's where it's like you're not consulting the people who are supposed to go into the transformation, but you're looking at the numbers, the contracts, the things that may not even be the essence of how we want to start agile. And I think the matrix is something, I think when we start the project or when we start this portfolio program anywhere, the way we start with a matrix there, and the way in the mid we approach certain other metrics, include other metrics, and then towards maybe a year down the line we include further more metrics, and the metrics we started with are no more relevant, because I've seen at portfolio level sometimes the leaders are showing velocity of the team, which is so irrelevant to me. I'm like, why are you even sharing the velocity of the team in a leaders connect? Like, it's not needed. Why that kind of exposure of, it's like you're exposing the team to next level, which is not needed, and that creates a pressure. So yeah, definitely.
One thing that I can think of to the question which JC asked about what bad will happen if people do not sort of change into the good metrics from bad metrics. What bad will happen in the maybe next 5 years or something, right? One possible thing that can happen is that it is going to create a lot of wastage for the organizations. Let me take a very specific example, right? Let us say people are still measuring code coverage and they're not going into mutation coverage. Now, what is going to happen because of that is you're going to force developers to write tests, and they will write very bad tests. But the reports will all show green. And when will you come to know about the problem? Only when you deploy in production, or when somebody there is a UAT state in some organizations, or at the last possible moment instead of the day one, when people write when that something is going wrong. Now, when that time happens, what do? You waste time and money to first find out what went wrong. That is a waste of time and money. And then you fix the problem. That is again a waste of time and money. Again, you retest the solution. That's again a waste of time and money. And then you deploy. And since you are always measuring code coverage, till now also you have not changed. Now, what is going to happen? That is also going to cause something else as an error. Right now, what you are doing is you are unnecessarily wasting a lot of time and money, just because you do not have a good metric, and that is basically a waste of human potential and waste of a lot of money that every company has. That using that money, they could actually do a lot of things, because all the time and money you are wasting in debugging and pushing things to prod again, developing and testing again, is actually a waste that you could have prevented them when you do in the first time, just by installing something called mutation testing in your organization. So economic waste, that is one thing very clearly. Second thing, your developers, the people who are on ground, are going to feel bad about themselves first, because they will think, okay, anyway, my code is always breaking in production, so I'm a bad developer, and that morale is a very bad thing. Second thing, they're going to say, okay, fine, my Saturday and Sundays I cannot plan anything because I don't know when something in prod will break, and I will be getting a call and I have to get into a job call, and that's going to cause a lot of stress. Even in a domestic environment, it's going to cause a lot of stress, right? You plan a weekend of a movie evening and then you get a call, you cannot go to a movie. That creates a lot of stress in the personal life of an employee. That is another thing. All these things can be avoided if you just move from code coverage to mutation coverage. It's as simple as that. And you cannot even put a price on whatever things we are talking about right now: morale of an employee, self-confidence of all the employees, and whether the employee is going to leave your organization because he thinks the work is too pressureful. All we see is that you are not giving enough safety nets for the developers to just enjoy their weekends and the nights without overworking themselves. That is another thing. So waste of human potential, attrition from developers, that's another thing that can happen when things are not taken in the right way. These are the two major things that I can think of, apart from the huge waste of money.
Yeah, just adding to what Vivek is telling, and we earlier, at least the deployment used to happen once in 2 months, 3 months. Now, because of this agile, because they want to do deployment more often, and now developers have to feel the same pressure every week or every 2 weeks. So that repeatedly that keeps happening. At least they had to worry about deployment only once in 2 months before. Now they have to worry about it every week and every 2 weeks. And now the measuring the right things is even more important in agile world. So then, and yeah, I think just adding to what
yes, if you're deploying maybe once in every week, then if you're not given that safety net to find the problems earlier, then every week you will go through that same stress cycle. Right, so it's easy to just people say, okay, install Jenkins and we will do deployment once in a week, so people can show off that their teams went into continuous delivery. But without proper quality practices, without proper quality metrics, if you just shift only the Jenkins pipelines, then you are in for a bad developer experience, which is very important today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you have to understand the science behind all that's happening in a team to be able to have more efficient output. So yeah, I think this sounds like one interesting book, and I think I'm going to spend my Sunday reading this for sure. And it's great having you all here. One last question I want to ask before we wrap it up. What is your favorite chapters from the book? Each one of you individually. What is that one favorite topic that you loved writing about, or your favorite topic from the book?
I
So
suspect
we'll go with
all
Kiran.
of us are going to talk about the one or two same things.
I'm just reading it to see what is my favorite. Just
for me, it is a mutation testing.
I think everything.
Actually.
Okay.
For me, it is a code coverage versus mutation testing, and why velocity is a bad thing. These two things I enjoyed writing, because we all had a lot of fun arguing among ourselves when we wrote that. So that's my favorite part.
So you have memories too with that topic.
Yes.
Okay. And anyone else?
I would say, go ahead.
Go ahead. So even for me, I think it's a conflict. So what I like about the book is what we wrote is about the bad metrics which is generally used. So that's what I mean. All the metrics which we told which can happen actually reduce the morale, like velocity and the other like code coverage. And the most, if you ask me, one thing which is good is, I think it's lead time. So I think it's the one metric can sort of tell everything about your team and improve a lot of things. So I think if you ask me one thing, it's just lead time. Yeah.
Great. And Guru?
Yeah, I would also agree with Vivek and Kiran, and mutation testing and then velocity, lead time. And if you ask me, I would say everything right in the book, because it's all written by us, and there is a lot of deliberation went in. If you ask a parent, which child you like most, it's very difficult to tell that, right? So
So many children you
Absolutely.
have.
Guru is giving a very politically correct answer. Guru, this is not, you have to give one.
No, I totally appreciate you guys, and thank you all for coming over. I'm sure the listeners gonna love your book, and yeah, let's stay connected. So thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very
Thank you,
much.
Kiran.
Thank
And
you so
it's
much
been a
for the,
pleasure.
yeah.
Pleasure to have you all finally on the show. It was great chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Have a nice
And
day.
it's
Because
nice
of your
having.
questions, I happened
Yeah.
to think a little bit, and some of my thoughts got clarified also. So thanks to you for that.
It's two-way.
Same here.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
We are
great.
learning.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.